People can look very normal from the outside, but their behavior may be a little different.
Those with invisible disabilities are fantastic at cloaking.
It's quite dangerous, especially having a previous brain injury.
My triggers are mainly screaming children and babies.
It was still hard for me to not keep thinking back to when the tragedy of the shooting happened.
It's exhausting. I looked right, I looked left, and in my mind I was in Afghanistan again.
I worked very hard to hide the fact that I was having issues.
Invisible disabilities are things that people might have to deal with that are not readily visible to someone who's looking at them from the outside. It might be a mental health issue where you're dealing with anxiety or depression, or more increasingly, we're seeing people with the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
I'm an Ottawa firefighter for 25 years. As firefighters, we can go to 600 traumatic events in our career, but the one that tipped the scales for me was in 2006, where a colleague fell through the roof. That was my, I guess you could say, breaking point. And it literally started to decline the next morning. I began to withdraw from my wife, and really that was the starting of a snowball that just continued to get bigger and bigger.
So people can look very normal from the outside, but their behavior may be a little different, and you may not clue into the fact that this person is actually dealing with a challenge that's very real to them.
I am a police officer. My initial injury was a result of a car accident. I received both physical and mental challenges and injuries. The physical injuries obviously were dealt with immediately, but I worked very hard to hide the fact that I was having issues. I had initially a lot of trouble getting into a car, a lot of trouble relearning how to drive. It wasn't a matter of having to learn to drive, but just learning to be in that experience and in the driver's seat, despite the fact that I wasn't even the driver in my collision. Nighttime was an issue because my collision happened at night. I would sound sirens and lights, flashing lights. That one has been a very big challenge, and that's really hard to deal with when your car makes those sounds and makes those lights and you're driving to the calls listening to that. So that was a huge challenge for me. The public, they may not necessarily see that because those with invisible disabilities are fantastic at cloaking. We can make it look like we're having a great day if we want to, if we have to, if our life depends on it, and that's kind of what this is.
Les enfants peuvent démontrer différentes incapacités non visibles, des déficits importants, mais qui n'est pas toujours visible à la personne qui est non entraînée à le voir. Et souvent, les enfants qui sont atteints de santé mentale ou qui ont aussi un syndrome de stress post-traumatique ne vont pas nécessairement démontrer les mêmes symptômes que quelqu'un qui est adulte.
I suffered from a traumatic brain injury, and I'm chronically ill, still waiting on a concrete diagnosis at the moment. I wasn't able to go out to the public on my own. I felt like I was kind of tethered to my house because specifically of my fainting spells. I wasn't able to go about doing things as I normally would safely. I could go out, but it's, you know, if I faint, it's quite dangerous, especially having a previous brain injury.
Des sensations fortes qui sont évoquées par un élément de surprise, un son fort, une odeur, un goût, une émotion forte, quelqu'un qui va crier ou une menace qui est perçue par le visage de quelqu'un. Donc tous ces facteurs peuvent déclencher chez une personne avec un syndrome de stress post-traumatique.
I was an advanced care paramedic, and I had to step away from that in 2015 as a result of accumulation of traumatic events over the span of my career. My triggers are mainly screaming children and babies. The ones that affected me the most were dealing with the pediatric population. So just seeing things happen to children that most average citizens wouldn't want to see happen to children.
Anything that they will perceive as a threat, and again, the emphasis is on the word perceive. So they may be in a situation where there's a lot of people around them, and it might remind them of a time that they were in a crowd where there were people who intended harm, for example.
I was working at the Senate of Canada here in Ottawa. I had had trauma in my life a couple of years back as I was growing up. And when the shooting happened on Parliament Hill, I think it magnified everything in my mind. I was having a hard time even walking up the hill to get to my office because there were so many RCMP and so many guns out during the summer for protection. But even though I knew that, it was still hard for me to not keep thinking back to when the tragedy of the shooting happened. I'm not able to organize my thoughts as clearly anymore. It's just been a trying time that way.
If you have a type of psychological injury like this that has been caused by a significant situation or event, and you may be looking for perceived threats that no one else would necessarily see, but they're very real to the person who's experiencing them.
We were actually finishing up a session of EMDR that was pretty intense. And all of a sudden a vehicle backfired in my neighborhood. And she explained it to me afterwards. I looked right, I looked left, and she knew I was in Afghanistan again. And it took her 15 minutes to talk me back, because in my mind I was waiting for where the attack is coming from to determine what we do. So that's why I don't do fireworks either. Those are huge triggers for me.
We're seeing more and more service dogs coming into public. So service dogs can provide a number of reassurances, and they do really play a number of different roles for different people. Of course, we know about seeing eye dogs. They've been around for a long, long time. But now we have service dogs that will actually come basically to your emotional rescue as well.
Sometimes the right person is standing right in front of you. You might not notice, but I know he notices you. I'm not broken, I'm just hoping you're my greatest fear. Maybe you just don't see him. There's no writing on the wall. Things that you say might confuse him. None of that